Hello, I'm Mbweha, you can call me Ben of Team Relentless, and this is the Playbook, where you can come to learn to do something very specific in Star Wars Legion a little bit better than you did before, assuming we ever get to play in person again. Today we're talking about the iconic Imperial All-Terrain Scout Transport. The ATST was the very first expansion. I really thought we'd heard the last of this guy. Might as well see what he has to say. Maybe he's changed his tune. Always for growth on Team Relentless. Dear Mbweha, you can call me Ben of Team Relentless. I sensed with my dark voodoo force powers that you were about to make another useless video about a unit that isn't even top tier. Everyone knows that clone death balls are where it's at right now in the competitive meta. And if you aren't talking about those, you shouldn't even be talking. Just thought you'd like to know your #1 anti-fan, Darth Jar Jar 420. Look, Darth Jar Jar, I'm not going to make a video about clones right now because between standby sharing, Overwatch, ARC Troopers, vital assets, situational awareness, R2-D2, and Overwatch, they are broke as hell. There, I said it. I'm sorry, but the game is the least balanced it has ever been, and if you don't believe me, go look at the Season 5 Invader League single elimination bracket. Oh, this guy really brings out the worst in me. Look, I apologize for the negativity. What were we talking about? Chicken walkers, something like that? Let's roll the thing, and then we'll get right back on track. As I was saying, the ATST was the very first Legion expansion, so it's seen quite a bit of play. And after its summer 2019 points reduction, it was revitalized, and it does continue to be a viable option in competitive list building. So let's talk about how to maximize its potential. Number 1, loadouts. The two players I know who play the ATST best are Starscream and 2019 World Champion Luke Cook. When I asked them about what the best loadout was, they simultaneously told me the exact same thing. Always bring a Hammers pilot, the mortar, and a link targeting array. This staple build runs 195 points and really maximizes the effectiveness of the walker, which we'll talk about in a minute. The other loadout that's worth a serious look simply adds the Twin Light Blaster Cannon to the previous build. For 20 more points, it makes the ATST that much scarier in the mid and late game or against other armor. Now, I'm sure some people are having some "wait, but what about" thoughts right now, and that's fine, but let me see if I can anticipate some of those and address them. The grenade launcher. It just doesn't get fired enough to be worth it. Arbmab. It isn't that he's bad, it's just that he isn't as good as a Hammers pilot. Weiss, or Weiss I guess is correct. Anyway, after you run the numbers on him with all the hard points and an LTA, he actually has less firepower and is more expensive than that Hammers, Blaster, Mortar, LTA build. Number 2, bait. ATSTs are mean because they force your opponent to make a hard choice. Sink roughly 16 crits into a single unit, or ignore a giant killing machine for 6 turns. In general, you want your opponent to fire at your walker. Why? Well, for 1, it doesn't take suppression, and for 2, anything that isn't a crit just bounces off. Think of it this way. According to rollcrits.com, a full unit of phase 2s with a Z6 and let's say 4 surge tokens and 4 aims would deal, after defense dice are rolled, roughly 4 wounds to shore troopers caught in the open. That same shot into an ATST after defense is rolled? 1.5 wounds. So which would you rather have? 4 dead shore troopers and a suppression, or 1 or 2 wounds on your 11 health ATST? Now obviously, if you're playing against a list that has a lot of critical X, or surge to crit, or impact X, it's a different story. And getting shot at by units that have any of those 3 things is going to bring down your walker. You just need to make the most of things before that happens. If they don't shoot at your ATST, well, number 3, kill things. If you've ever talked to Starscream about Legion for more than 5 minutes, he's likely introduced you to his patent-pending flowchart of winning at Legion, or PPF Cowl for short. It goes something like this. If you can, aim and fire. If you can't do that, move and fire. If you can't do that, quit because you're bad. His words, not mine. Normally this is a pretty obvious and comical oversimplification of how to play Legion, but in the case of the ATST, it's actually spot on. That's exactly how you should be playing your ATST, except in very rare circumstances that have to do with the objective, like needing to sprint into an enemy deployment zone for breakthrough, or blocking your opponent's path to a key position. So with that in mind, it's really just a question of what to shoot at. The answer is very simple. Shoot at whatever you're most likely to do the most damage to. In general, you're looking for shots into the open or light cover, or into armor since you have so much impact. Number 4, Battle Deck. So blowing stuff up with your ATST is good and all, but technically, that's not how you win the game. Now you might call this lazy, but let's just go ahead and steal Starscream's Battle Deck from the most recent Invader League single elims and go from there. First of all, take a look at the deployments. All but Hemmed In make use of the short edge of the board. This helps prevent your ATST from being flanked and slows your opponent's arming down from getting to you. Hemmed In is the odd duck out here, but when you remember PPF Cowl, you'll see that it lends itself well to the flowchart of aiming and shooting. In addition to that, it lends itself well to the objectives in the deck. Speaking of objectives, there are no real big surprises here. Probably the most important thing about the objectives is what isn't there. ATSTs do not want to play Recover the Supplies, for example. Last we have the conditions, and again, it's more about what isn't here than what is. You don't want limited visibility, you don't want minefield, you don't want fortified positions, so those aren't there. So yeah, overall, your battle deck with the ATST is more about those free vetoes that happen when you're a blue player. Which is why whatever your list is, if it's got an ATST in it should probably have a pretty big bid for blue in the current meta. Speaking of lists, number 5, list ideas. Let's take a look at 3 example lists. First of all, I submit to you, and I'm sure this is going to be a really big surprise at this point, Starscream's Invader League Season 5 single elimination list. To run this list, you mostly just follow the flowchart. Get an order to your walker at least 5 out of 6 turns and let it do its thing. Meanwhile, in the early game, play it really safe with your snipers in your core. Then in the mid and late game, use them to finish off activations and secure objectives. Also, I want to just point out that this is the highest ranged firepower rating I've seen in a list yet. Just FYI. Note that you can fiddle with this list to bring it up to 11 activations by adding in a mortar and taking off some of the upgrades from the other units. The problem though is that you'll end up with hardly any bid, which, as we covered earlier, is not ideal. Okay, the next list is max activation, so prep your gag reflex. Yeah, so you can get a 13 act ATST list and still have a 20-point bid. Now if you run this, note that you'll probably never play covert observation, and that's fine. You'll just use standing orders probably on turn 1 to get the order to the ATST and pull it back into your hand. This list plays pretty much the same way as Starscream's 10 act list. The main difference is that it exchanges some firepower for some defensive rating and 3 more activations. Also, in your battle deck, I'd swap in rapid reinforcements for War Weary. You know what's better than 1 ATST? 2 of them. Okay, real talk, it's probably not actually better, but it isn't exactly bad, and it is a lot of fun to have 2 walkers on the table. To play this list successfully, you absolutely must hold back and protect your squishy core troopers until the mid or late game. Like the One Ring, they must be kept secret and safe for as long as possible.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Bonus! Remember when deploying to leave room for that big old base and to have a plan for turn 1 that doesn't involve trampling your own troops. Remember you can use the ATST as mobile light cover area terrain, as well as a plug for narrow areas on the board to mess with your opponent's access to key areas or objectives. Remember to bring a stupid little astro droid along to make your ATST that much harder to kill, or to peel off the rare ion token. It's definitely worth the 9 points.
You stupid little astro droid.
Summary. Let's review. Number 1, always bring at least a Hammer's Pilot, a mortar, and an LTA. Number 2, use your ATST as bait for enemy fire, provided they don't have access to a bunch of extra crits. Number 3, follow the flowchart to eliminate activations. Number 4, bid big for pre-game vetoes. And number 5, probably the most competitive ATST list out there right now is Starscream's, so take a look at it. Well, now you know how to use your ATST better than before. I hope. If you liked the video, please prove it with a click and subscribe if you're into that sort of thing. I'm Mbweha, you can call me Ben of Team Relentless, and this has been the Playbook, ATST.